see. All right. Howdy, everybody. First, I want to say thank you so much for being here. My name is Max. I'm the president of College Dims here at the University of Montana, and I think that we are all so glad to have so many people show up for this wonderful town hall-esque situation because, well, before I say anything, I want to say why I chose the University of Montana as my college, because I had two options when I graduated from Billings West. I could either go here to Missoula, or I could go to MSU in Bozeman. And between those two, you're right, there was not a single bit of debate, because I would rather live in, honestly, like anywhere else other than Bozeman. So when I had that option, I immediately filed for the University of Montana, because the University of Montana, Missoula itself, is one of the best places on earth, and at least in my opinion, the best place in Montana. And that amazing value that this city has also goes into our wonderful representatives. We have one of the best delegations in the entire state, one of the most hardworking delegations, and one of the best when it comes to representing the actual values that we need right now. So, hopefully tonight we have some good introductions. Hopefully things are really good, and yeah, thank you guys all for being here, seriously.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Stacey Anderson. I have the privilege of being the City Councilwoman from Ward 5, South Hills, Linda Vista, Miller Creek. But tonight, I am the enforcer. I will be helping moderate this panel with my friends and all of you, an exciting night, and thank you all for spending your evening with us. Just a quick little rundown of the order of operations for this evening. We have questions are going to be asked from the audience via a card, so hopefully you pick some of those up at the table out front. If not, there are various people waving who have them. So write down your questions and pass them ultimately to Lauren here in the front. We are going to give each legislator 1 minute to introduce themselves. There's a lot of them, and they like to talk. But we are also so lucky to have so many. Other counties wouldn't be so lucky. So 1 minute to introduce themselves, say who they are, where they represent, and what their biggest takeaway in terms of a win for this legislative session. And then we will have 2.5 minutes for each question. Jay here is our timer. And then at the end, we'll hear from a couple other folks, and then you guys are gonna have a chance to chat with them individually. So with that, we will get started. And we will start right here to my left with Representative Katie Sullivan.
Hi, thank you. My name is Katie Sullivan. I am a fourth-term representative out of House District 93, which includes sections of the university neighborhood here, all the way out to Clinton and Tura, and swings down and gets a bit of the some of the Lolo and Florence area. And I've served for 4 sessions, and my biggest win of the session is killing the partisan judge bills that were attacking our judiciary.
Hi everyone, I'm S.J. Howell. I represent House District 100, which is the north side, west side, and downtown Missoula, the only and best 3-digit district in the state. And I think my biggest win, I echo what Katie said, but also lifting the sunset and making our state's Medicaid expansion program permanent, protecting health care for 100,000 Montanans.
Hi, everybody. My name is Zoe Zephyr. I represent House District 95, which includes where we are sitting right now here at the University of Montana, U District, Slant Streets, and the east half of Franklin to the Fort. In my second term, and I think for me the biggest win was a lot of what we've seen in the push to the far right in the Republican Party and the communities that they're looking to demonize, particularly thinking immigrants, LGBTQ people. A lot of those bills came to this session, and unlike the vast majority of states that had Republicans in charge, we killed many of those bills here, including flipping half of the Republicans on some LGBTQ bills. Those are the big wins for me.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for coming. I'm Andrea Olson, and I've had the honor of being born, raised, and educated here in Missoula, Montana. I have left the country, but I have served for 12 years, and I am grateful for the people of Missoula who helped create and make me a strong advocate for the people a strong advocate for Montana and really a strong advocate for making society work. I played mostly defense in the legislature. That's kind of my job and so we had to watch. You know, we as Democrats decided not to participate in the interim on all these bad judiciary bills because the very system was set up in a way that was really unconstitutional. It was designed to control the judiciary. And so we killed those bills and many more, and so I'm very glad for that. We also had a record number of study bills. Oh, there's my end.
Thanks, Andrea.
So we
Next.
will be studying lots, so I encourage you to pay attention to what we're doing during the interim.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Melody Cunningham, and I'm a first-time legislator and represent House District 97, which runs along the Clark Fork and is the south side of Mullen and some of the east and west side of Reserve. I would say I love the successes that have already been spoken about, so I won't add to those. I will say that from my personal standpoint, the fact that as a first-time legislator in the minority party, I was able to get 3 bills over the finish line and signed by the governor. And I get a little extra time, but I don't think I'll need it. So in homage to Marilyn Marler, Representative Marler, who can't be here tonight, who passed the bill to eliminate single-use plastics that got unfortunately vetoed in, I think, a undignified manner by our governor. I have my portable cup that collapses that I take with me everywhere, and I have 4 of them. So I did get a couple extra seconds. So for any 4 people here who promise they'll use them, promise they'll evangelize about using them, I have 4, and come find me afterwards.
Hi, everybody. Good to see everyone. I unfortunately did not bring any goodies to give out, but my name is Jonathan Carlin. I represent House District 98, which runs along primarily along Mullen Road. It picks up a little bit of the north side and the west side. I had the pleasure of serving as minority whip this session in my second legislative session. I think the highlights for me were some of the bipartisan work we were able to do around education funding, property taxes, and yeah, I guess I'll leave it at those 2.
Hi, I'm Tom France. I represent House District 99, which is the north side, north of the interstate, a little bit of the Rattlesnake, a little bit out towards the Y. If you go north, you're probably in my district. I guess the bills have been great, but we should not be here without thanking those that passed a constitution that required redistricting every 10 years with a bipartisan, merit-based approach to setting up our legislative districts in the House and Senate. And with redistricting that came after the 2020 census, the growth in Bozeman, the growth in Missoula, the shifts in population, and a good commission that fought hard to make sure everyone was fairly represented, we picked up more seats in Montana because of new districts than any other state in the country. And when that translated to the House and Senate floor, it gave us the numbers that we needed to be effective in Helena.
So hi, everyone. I'm Senator Ellie Boldman. This is a citizen legislature, so it's only a part-time job that we're politicians, so I'll share first that I'm a lawyer and I'm a mom. My little boy's in 5th grade, so if someone wants to order pizza, that'd be great. This is my 7th legislative session. My 3rd governor. I didn't vote for this one. And I share that because when I started under Brian Schweitzer, this is a Democratic audience, and Democrats held every statewide seat and both U.S. senators, and now, of course, we hold none. So I'll share that next session. I'm a holdover senator. I will be the senior-most woman serving in the Montana legislature. It also means I'm a holdover, so if you have bill draft requests, let's get them in now. I think my greatest win is that when you hear today, we killed, the greatest win is that we didn't just kill anything alone. It is the common sense, civility, and compromise of many, many good people on both sides of the aisle that got this done. So in a state where Donald Trump won by 120,000 votes, everybody in this room still better hold a hell of a lot of hope out, because there's so much hope out there. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. Excuse me. I'm Willis Curdy. I represent Senate District 49. Starts 2 blocks west of Lowell School, runs west to Roller Coaster Deshaw between Highway 10 West and Orchard Homes. I'm serving my 6th term in the legislature. My biggest takeaway is playing defense, but also as the minority vice chair of Senate Business and Labor, we're able to kill some really serious anti-worker bills in this state. And I have to give a great shout out for our working folks here in Montana who stepped up to say no right to work in Montana.
All right, just before we get Mark Thane going, remember, send your questions in. So Lauren's there. Hopefully some ideas are percolating as the legislators are telling you about what they do, where they serve, and some of the wins from this last legislative session. All right, Representative Thane.
First, thank you all for being here. My name is Mark Thane, and I have the honor of representing House District 89, which is a sliver of the South Hills between 39th and 55th Street, and then goes out and takes in Lolo and that area. This was my 3rd term in the legislature, and I served on House Taxation, Education, and Agriculture, which is an interesting assignment for a Missoulian. In terms of the biggest win, it's been alluded to that there's been some collaboration that occurred this session that was not present really in the first 2 sessions I served, and that was refreshing. And Jonathan and I had the opportunity to work with a couple of members of Republican leadership to help negotiate a property tax solution that actually passed on the last day and was signed by the governor. And you as Missoulians will see some significant property tax relief as a result.
Hello, everybody. I'm Representative Connie Keogh. And before I get going, I just want to this is my 4th term, and I just want to give a really big shout out to Missoula Democrats. So when I first started, they've been there by my side and continued to do an amazing job. I think they're getting better every day, the group that organized tonight's event. I serve House District 92, which is the lower Rattlesnake, and it goes on out to Bonner, on up East Missoula, Bonner, on out towards Sealy and around Sealy and up to Condon. I sit on the House Appropriations Committee, and I'm on the Education Budget Committee, and all of the wins that they've talked about so far, ditto, ditto, ditto. But I think we did some really good work around our budget bill, House Bill 2, and we did some great, well, we're still waiting to get it signed by the governor, but I'm very hopeful. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shelley Fayant. I represent House District 91, which is the upper Rattlesnake, goes into the wilderness, the tribal primitive area, Arlee, clear up to Ronan. It goes west into Dixon and Camas Prairie, so Sanders Lake and Missoula County, parts of those. I am a freshman legislator. I learned a lot. My intent was to listen and learn, and I ended up playing a lot of defense. There was a lot that I was confronted with. The Indian Caucus is the largest in any state in the United States. We were 12 strong this year. And one of the major bills that we got passed was the Montana Indian Child Welfare Act, and it kind of augments the Indian Child Welfare Act. So that was one of our big wins. The other win for me was that I didn't quit.
I'm waiting for to hear the rest of Eli's sound effects on his phone. I'm Bob Carter. I represent House District 96. That takes care of Orchard Homes, or some of Orchard Homes, Target Range, Big Flat, and then all the way up and down South Avenue from Target Range School out to Sentinel High School. This is my second session. The committees that I serve on are Business and Labor, Agriculture, and Energy, and then in the interim, I'm also on the Energy Committee. The negative side of sitting way down here is everybody that side of me got to say all the good parts, and I have to come up with something else to say. And I would add that we made some pretty good strides in education and teacher funding this session. Not everything that our core values cover, but we're taking baby steps in the right direction. And thank you guys so much for being out here. Really appreciate you too.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shane Morjo, Senator representing Senate District 50. Sorry, Andrea, they wouldn't change the numbers or keep the numbers as they were. Represent part of the west side, north side, and then run up to onto the Flathead Indian Reservation, almost into Arley. I'm a member of the Salish and Kootenai tribes. Proud to have had 3 members from CSKT in the legislature. And that's pretty incredible when you consider we had 0 we were one of the only tribes in Montana that had no representation for years and years, and now we have 3, so it's pretty incredible. I'd say our biggest strength this session was unity. The Senate, things get tough, but we stayed together, we stuck together. We had very slim margins we were working with, and all the wins that you just heard happened because we stuck together and we worked together, coordinated with the House members, got a lot of great stuff done. It's my 5th session as a minority whip, sat on Senate Finance, the Law and Justice and Judiciary section, also the Vice Chair for Natural Resources. The interim, I'm on the Legislative Finance Committee and the Board of Investments. And I guess the highs, there's so many as you just heard, but I would say the trust that we built, which included childcare, pensions, the housing trust, which had veterans money in it.
Shane, thank you so much, but you only get, I know, yes, sorry, you only get a minute for introduction, yes, and we didn't, the quacker got turned off. Okay, sorry, thank you, everyone, clap for Shane Morjo, yes, okay. All right, I'm serious about running a tight ship here. So thanks so much for everyone who has turned in some questions. We have them here. Because we have so many legislators, we're going to start off with one question, and we're going to direct it to a legislator. Only that legislator will answer it. If we get through all the written questions, which I don't think we will, then we can do pop-up from the audience. And like I said, you can meet with them individually if your particular question or issue doesn't get brought up. So we're going to start super wonky with this one, and it's for Representative Jonathan Carlin. Oh my God, I feel like I'm on a game show. All right, so how will House Bill 544, House Bill 399, House Bill 398, and Ricky's bill truly help people? How do we bring it nationally? Please tell us what the heck those bills are, and then how it's going to help us bring them nationally.
Thanks, Stacey. Yeah, I feel like I'm on Jeopardy or something. So those bills are related to prior authorization for healthcare services. So essentially what those bills are your doctor says, say you need a certain medication, the insurance company requires prior authorization, they can deny you, and then people have to go through a bureaucratic process in order to get what the doctor prescribed them. So what we did with I want to give a shout out to Dr. Lauren Wilson because she was absolutely instrumental in passing these bills. But what these bills do, I'll give an example. Like one of them says essentially that if an insurance company is going to deny somebody of a medication that was prescribed, that denial needs to come from a peer, so somebody the same specialty. So you're not going to have, let's say, a nurse denying a neurosurgeon's prescription, or you're not going to have an OBGYN denying a neurosurgeon's prescription. So one of the things it sets up, for example, is peer-to-peer review. It also takes care of issues related to chronic conditions. So, if you have, let's just say, diabetes, instead of having to go through the prior authorization process every few months, we say that for a year, if you get a prescription on January 3rd, you shouldn't need to, in March or June, need to go through this whole prior auth process again. So it sets up quite a few, really substantive changes. And these bills were originally met with pretty stiff opposition from the pharmacy benefit managers and the insurers. We were able to come to, I'd say, somewhat of a compromise to where through a lot of tough work, again with the help of Lauren and lots of stakeholders, we were able to come to a spot that I think the insurers can live with it and make those changes. They feel it's workable, and we think it'll help a lot of patients. So it was a real highlight for me to be part of.
Great. Even under time. Thanks so much, Representative Carlin. All right. Somebody obviously was very wonky who wrote this question. All right, so next up, I am going to ask this question of Representative Howell. How can we as legislators, or you as legislators, help mitigate the Medicaid and Medicare cuts that are happening at the federal level? Do you have a magic
Really
wand?
good question. So for folks who haven't been following this, the U.S. Congress passed a budget reconciliation bill last night, passed by one vote, 215 to 214. I know some of us up here have some flashback to one vote bill passages. And that bill has a lot of really bad stuff. And part of it includes major changes to federal Medicaid law. The biggest piece is work requirements, federal work requirements that will result in millions of people losing health coverage, either because, for whatever reason, illness, disability, childcare, whatever, they can't work, or because of the bureaucracy and red tape and paperwork that come along with work requirements. One of the other really terrible things that the bill does is require states to redetermine eligibility every 6 months, and it limits the sort of look back time for how long it takes. So if the department takes a long time to process your application, your eligibility doesn't revert back to when you applied. And anyone who remembers the disastrous mess we had over the last few years with redetermination, basically this bill would be saying that's the policy forever and ever. And you can imagine what that's going to do to Montana, what our insurance, our uninsured rate will look like, what that's going to mean for rural hospitals and providers all across the state who are just trying to keep their doors open and pay their bills. So the actual question is, what can we do? Which is a good question. And what I would say first and foremost is that our congressional delegation is on holiday. They're back in the state for the next week, and I think we should go find them and let them know what we think. Both Congress members voted for this bill, and I think they should hear what we think about that. It's heading to the Senate, and our two senators should hear what we think they should be looking at. I think we need to keep the pressure on as loudly and as actively and as incessantly as we possibly can. I will say that there is some hope for stopping and changing this, and I'd be happy to talk more about what that can look like.
All right. The work never ends. All right, this question I'm going to ask to Dr. Cunningham, and it's a little bit closer to home. I read that there are measles now in both Flathead County and Gallatin County, and how are we able to respond to this crisis and keep our families safe?
Thank you. That's a great question. And the disappointing bill of mine that didn't get through, that got an enormous amount of help from Dr. Wilson, was a bill that would have allowed the data that is by law collected by our schools to get passed on to DPHHS, which stopped in 2021. And we're the only state that doesn't send our cumulative de-identified data to our Department of Health and Human Services. So I think what we can do is people should, particularly pregnant moms and folks with new babies, should talk to their pediatricians and their obstetricians. I think most people don't realize that measles and other diseases that can be prevented by vaccines are bad, and they present in a very generic way. So measles in particular is devastating in that if we're in this room, the measles virus and someone is contagious, 4 days before their rash and 4 days after their rash, 90% of people in the room, or 9 out of 10 people who are not immunized or under-immunized, will become infected. And people do not also know that 4% of pregnant women who get measles will die, and thus their baby will die. And I think we need to talk to our medical professionals and know how to protect ourselves and our babies, talk to our neighbors and folks who are worried on the other side about vaccines, and ask them why, listen to why, help them to know things like 4% of pregnant moms who get measles will die, because I think that many people don't know that. Many people don't know, as I do. I've seen a baby with pertussis or whooping cough turn blue and need a breathing tube. People don't realize how serious these diseases are because luckily we haven't seen them. So I would spread the word that way. I would ask questions rather than elicit anger that probably some of us feel, particularly if we have loved ones who are vulnerable. And I'd be happy to talk about that more after the session.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Cunningham. Even with an actual doctor in the legislature, they're still not passing good bills for that. So, all right, I had the question. Where did it go? Okay, this one is, and this, I appreciate the person who wrote this. What bathroom do I use if my son is autistic? No, wait, listen to the whole question. That's not what you think it is. Son is autistic and there's no family bathroom. I'm a mom. And I'm going to ask there are many moms on here, but I'm going to ask Senator Hill or Ellie for this. Senator Ellie Hill for this question.
So it's Senator Boldman, but that's all right. We're asking me about the bathroom question?
I'm just like,
Go ahead.
as the mom.
Go ahead.
I mean, I have another question for Zoe, so, but
Go ahead, Zoe.
you could go for it.
I
Actually,
think my neighbor next to me had a great answer, which was use whatever bathroom you want. The law went into effect, and before it's blocked now for those curious, so they can't do nothing no more. But when it was in effect in the Capitol building, Hal and I didn't follow it, and I beat on the second floor and dared the governor to do something, and he didn't do you know what. So there you go.
all right. All right, so this question is for Representative Thane. Education is clearly under attack at the federal level. Could you explain? No, I'm sorry. This is Representative Keogh. Making notes here. All right, same question. What? There's no way I cannot ask Representative Thane the property tax question. So, and I've got like 4 of them stacked up here. So, Representative Keogh, education is clearly under attack at the federal level. Could you explain the bills that increasing? Oh my goodness, I don't know what the funding for teachers and address the current status of school voucher programs in Montana. Yes. I feel like it's like a phone a friend thing. Okay. Education is clearly under attack at the federal level and the state level here. Could you explain the bills increasing funding for teachers and address the current status of school voucher programs here in Montana?
Well, we don't currently, right?
We don't. And how do we stop that?
You want that answer. Because we voted against it, and we fought hard against it. Yes. And it's definitely unconstitutional. Thank you. I'm getting a lot of help from friends here. Thank you. But as mentioned previously by someone in the introduction, we did make some good gains towards helping our school system. And the STARS Act, that was a bipartisan supported bill, is going to help raise teacher salaries. Now, did it do enough? No. Do we need to do more? Certainly. And maybe some of you are aware that every 10 years there is a study that is mandated by the legislature to review school funding. And that's just now starting. It's called the decennial study. And there will be representatives on this commission, council, whatever we call it, from the legislature, from the core constitutional players, and that those who are the constitutional players are those who are mentioned in our Constitution as watching over education, taking care of education, and some public members. So I look forward to some really good work happening on that study, and that those serving next session can bring those ideas to the legislature, and we can continue to do a better job of funding our public schools, because we're not there yet. So, thank you.
See, you were the perfect one to answer that. All right. Senator Morgeau, what, if anything, did the legislature do this session to fund affordable housing programs like, for example, the Cole Trust Multifamily Housing Program, Affordable Housing Revolving Loan Fund, other housing funds, especially in light of the governor's housing task force?
All right, well, that's a loaded question, but, you know, I kind of anticipated that I'd get some questions on that. So, you know, I think one of the notable things that we got done this session, and I know we had two really incredible experts really worked their butts off, Representative Carlin and Representative Thane on the tax side. Of course, we got a homestead exemption passed this legislative session, which is really important for our property homeowners in Montana to get them property tax relief. One thing that we failed to get done was anything super meaningful for renters, because we know renters really bear the burden when it comes to property taxes. They just get passed on to them. And I just felt that was wrong. I had a bill to try and work on that. I know Representative Carlin did as well. And you know, I think unfortunately the majority of Montanans, our renters, got cut out of all of that. So I think that's a frustrating miss. I think we still need to do something on that front and fix that. But I will say that getting a housing trust into place this legislative session was a huge deal. The trust itself, I know there was some, you know, interesting perspectives on the trust fund as being people saying it was a slush fund and those sorts of things, but honestly, I think it was a huge win for Montana, getting long-term trust for pensions, getting a long-term trust for childcare, which is what I heard on the doors most of the entire 5 sessions that I've been in the legislature, and getting the housing trust portion in there, which is going to help Veterans Trust, Veterans Homeowners Program, the Housing Montana Fund, and low middle income loans for homeowners. So we got that built in so that we'll have permanent funding for that. And so at the end of the day, I think, you know, that trust really was a huge win for Montana, and we got a lot of great stuff done on the property tax side and for homeowners in Montana as well.
All right, this question is for Representative France. What are the possibilities / chances of passing a bill prohibiting other legislators who keep passing or ducking or passing unconstitutional bills, such as Carrie Seekins-Crow, and the anti-trans bills? When they are passed, they end up costing Montana taxpayer dollars millions of dollars to defend these.
Short answer is elect more Democrats. And, you know, I mean, one of the things I said about the session was we were in our legislative bubble and we're somewhat shielded from the mayhem that is going on in Washington, D.C. And the assault there on constitutionally guaranteed protections is appalling. There is certainly a trickle down into the MAGA wing of the Republican Party, and we saw terrible bills around sex, around parenting, around any number of subjects that, you know, one of the things Democrats have done in all 3 terms I've been there, have said to Republicans, moderate, hard right, MAGA, that bill you're passing is unconstitutional. And they look at us and shake their heads, and then they pass it anyway. And then the Supreme Court strikes it down, and then they say, well, the Supreme Court isn't listening to the people, so we better have partisan elections for Supreme Court justices. And so there is a vicious rhetorical circle on the right side of the political aisle here. And my good friend, Senator Boldman, you know, it's painful to think that 10 years ago we had a lot of Democrats, and some of that's our own failing to communicate. Some of it are national and international trends that we're a part of. But I think I would speak for all of my colleagues here that we're all in the legislature to keep up the fight. And we depend on everyone in this audience to keep voting for us, to keep helping us raise money to run effective campaigns. And all of us work every day to think, how do we do a better job of communicating our values and our priorities to get to 51% of the vote and to elect more Democrats and really bring sanity, compassion, thoughtfulness back to our political discourse.
All right, here's the question we all knew was coming for Representative Thane, my representative. It's in regards to property taxes, and there's several, and so I'm going to try to condense it to one. But more or less, how is it going to affect the people in this room and the people of Montana? And more or less, that's pretty much it. And then yet, at the same time, we still need to continue to fund services, local municipalities. And so how do we do that balance? And what do we do about the fact that the legislature did not do equalization? And so property taxes are going to continue to go up even though this bill has been passed.
It's a loaded question. First, I think to set the background a little bit, in 2023, post-pandemic, when new property assessments came out, the average increase in market value of residential property in Montana was 48%. You all saw that reflected on your assessment notices. You'll get another assessment notice in about a month, and it'll have about a 22% increase on it. That's driven by a couple things. Number one, after the pandemic and the advent of so much remote work, people learned that they can live where they recreate and work remotely. And then there's the Yellowstone effect. So there's been a huge demand for housing in Montana. And in the Missoula area, we're at about a 1,200 home deficit. So you've seen what that's done to market value of homes, and that's translated into increased property taxes. I served as vice chair of House Taxation, and I did a search right before the end of the session, and we had 47 bills introduced that had property tax as part of bill type. So it was something that was discussed frequently. There were two bills in particular. We heard a lot about the Governor's Property Tax Task Force, and the Republicans brought House Bill 231. And when that was originally introduced, it would have reduced the tax rate from 1.35% to 1.1%. And it would also have tried to solve property tax solely within residential and not moved any of the burden back to the other classes of property. Much was made about Northwestern Energy getting a $36 million tax break after the last assessment. So we as Democrats introduced our platform bill that would seek to rebalance among the classes of property and shift some of that burden back to those other classes. Bottom line is House Bill 231, the Republican bill, and our platform bill, House Bill 155, both worked through the majority of the session. And in the last week and a half or so of the session, Jonathan Carlin and I were able to sit down with the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader, the Republicans, and essentially help negotiate a compromise that took elements of both bills So in this coming year, you'll see largely elements of House Bill 155 come into play. In year 2, you'll see a homestead exemption come into play. But I think one of the keys is we forced the Republicans to reduce that tax rate that they proposed from 1.1% to a progressive schedule that we had in our bill. And the first $400,000 of assessed value will be taxed at 0.76%. The next increment of value at 0.9%, et cetera. So on a median priced home in Missoula, if everything were static, you would see about a $1,200 decrease in your property taxes. We know that cities, counties, schools, we have a fire levy. We know taxes are going to go up, so that will eat into that savings, but it is significant. Also in the first year, there will be a $400 rebate, and that's an incentive for you to apply so that the Department of Revenue gets information on what are primary residences versus second homes, and that will influence your beneficial property tax rate in succeeding years.
We'll take a quiz on that later. All right, this one is for Senator Olson. Does Montana need to worry about voter suppression?
So,
I didn't write this.
yes, it's amazing the number of ways in which the other side spends their time and energy to go after every single right that we cherish, including the right to vote, that our ancestors died for, that we continue to fight for, is the right to vote. Because who gets to vote determines who represents you. And yes, we had many bills to erode that, from identification bills to just location bills to even the way they want to complicate how the election offices work, what they do during their free time. I'm not sure there is any free time. So all of these, there were all these kinds of attempts. Some of them were stopped, but I'm not actually sure what the final tally was. Oh, I killed the unsound mind bill. What's that?
It was a terrible title. I mean, good bill. Good that you killed it.
Yes. So we did kill some bills, but they sneak it in really weird ways. So literally, okay, is the duck quacking yet? Okay. Okay. So, yeah, so we did kill some of the bills, but it's a constant. They're going to continue to do this every single way they can. And so we know that there were 25 bills viewed as anti-trans, but those affect everybody's rights. When we affect one person's right, it affects everybody's rights. And then you add to that all the judicial bills, which is trying to affect the judiciary's ability to protect our rights. So it is so widespread, it is on every single level of protecting our values from being able to become the communities that we live in. And so yes, we have to continue to worry about voter suppression on every level. Is that the question?
Yeah. Yes, I think you summed it up well. They're attacking our rights at all levels. All right, this question is for Representative Carter. We're going to go down to the other end. Right now, thousands of Montanans rely on jobs related to fossil fuels. How do we fight the essential threat that climate change, the existential threat of climate change, while not learning not hurting historically democratic working class voters or leave them behind? Gosh, it would really help if I could read this. Okay, here, one more time, I'm gonna repeat this. Right now, thousands of Montanans rely on jobs related to fossil fuels. How do we fight the existential threat that is climate change while not leaving behind historically democratic working class voters?
So great question. I'm on the Energy Committee, and that's one of my passions. As someone who's now drives an electric car. I've had solar on my house for almost 15 years now. I have moved over to that side and I understand it. That said, I totally understand. I've got 6 old tractors that run on fossil fuel. I'm not going to get rid of those anytime soon. So the answer is there's got to be an all of the above strategy. And yet we need to start pushing as hard as we can over to a resource that is renewable, and that is our wind and our solar. We are one of the best places in the country for wind and solar energy, and we can do that. Right now, we export about half of the energy that we produce in Montana, and we need to be able to keep more of that in state, number one. We saw a lot of attacks on energy this last session, trying to put more separation, a half mile between windmills, power turbines, and a property line or something like that, because of people are concerned about throwing off ice or maybe hurting birds or something like that. And yet we're taking a very mature industry like the fossil fuel coal industry, and we're giving them incentives to keep doing and using coal, and I think that's a mistake. Right now, yes, we need to be able to, in the middle of January when we've got very still conditions, no wind, very little solar, we need to be able to power something up and use that. I understand that, but we shouldn't be subsidizing and putting more money into a dying industry, and we need to move to the 21st century finally and get out of the 18th century.
All right, Representative Zephyr, since you did the assist, you'll get your own question. In the past election, we saw a large swing to the right. I am a Gen Z voter. How do you go about regaining college voters and overall voters' trust?
That is a great question, and I think the first thing that you need to recognize if you want to be successful in the moment we're in politically is that we talk about a shift to the right in the last election. And I think what I would actually reframe that as is an anti-incumbent or an anti-establishment sentiment. Trump's first election and the second election, he ran on this idea of being anti-swamp, being anti-that. He's proven to be none of that, but that's what he's running on. And I think if you are anyone my generation, millennial, or Gen Z, Gen Alpha as they're coming up, you are not wrong when you look at the world and see that the promise of it does not function the way that we were told. That, our parents who said if you go to college, you'll walk out and you'll have a lovely job. And, my boss, when I worked at the University of Montana, bought a home at 20 for, like 50 grand and was set. And if you are looking at the state of the world right now, it is worse. It is harder. It does seem unfair. And to supplement that, we get news so rapidly right now that every failure in our country and every failure in the world is broadcast to you immediately. And the urgency of the problems are hard to ignore when you are seeing them 24/7. I think the way we have to approach this is by not shrinking from that moment, of not being what I would say polling driven or middle ground driven, but being able to say, hey, yes, the system is broken. And we are not going to walk into, not to throw stones at Senator Schiff, but we're not going to send Trump a strongly worded letter. We're going to use every tool at our disposal. Senator Olson said that the right is using every attack to strip away our rights. They're targeting every community to strip away our rights. We have to be willing to use every single tool at our disposal and show people that we're willing to do that. And that's how you win young voters. I think we're seeing that successfully right now with Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders when they were here, but also with young progressives like Kat Abugazudala out in Illinois and others. And so that's, to me, the path forward is be uncompromising in your values. And to add as a small addendum, that being uncompromising in your values is, I think, how we were successful this session, because it's not just good for your voters or good for people on the left. It actually highlights the fractures within the Republican Party and creates opportunities for us to have successful bipartisanship. If we cave early, we lose those opportunities. If we stand by our values, we can succeed.
Ooh, coming in right at the wire with a great answer. Thank you, Representative. Yep. All right. Well, this question kind of expands upon that, and this is for Senator Curdy. We seem to be in an extremely partisan times, no duh. What success have you had with building bipartisan approaches, and how can we promote healthy bipartisan communications?
Thank you, Stacey. Appreciate it. So my first session in the legislatures was in 2015. Okay? I don't know if you remember everything that went on that session. We did 3 really outstanding things for the state. We passed a water compact with the state of Montana and the Confederation Kootenai tribes. We passed the Disclose Act, trying to deal with all of the dark money that was flowing into Montana. And we also passed one other thing that has a major impact on the health and welfare of the people of the state of Montana. And that is our first passage of Medicaid expansion. I've had the opportunity to vote for Medicaid expansion 3 times. And I tell you what, each time is impressed in how important it is to us. But it was done we were able to do it for one reason. We were able to work across party lines with the Solutions Caucus to get those things done. This last session, we had 9 members of the moderate Republicans who worked with us on a number of issues to get a lot of things done. You've heard people talk about trying to push back on all of the bad court bills. Well, that's a result of all of us, both in the House and Senate, working together with those folks on the other side to stop those nefarious bills. In my Business and Labor and Economic Affairs Committee, I mentioned this earlier. I had 3 moderate Republicans who we were able to work on diffusing any efforts to push right to work in Montana. We passed quality insurance protection bills for all of you in this room and over 1 million Montanans. So again, I mean, and one last thing, I'm looking here at CB, you know, we passed an addition to the Montana Clean Indoor Air Act. E-cigarettes and vapes now are covered under the Montana Clean Indoor Air Act. That was done, again, by being able to work across party lines to get those things done. See? There is value in talking to folks on the other side, especially those who you can talk to. Now, there are some, you know, it's more of a challenge, okay? But, you know, you have to work at it. And over the 12 years I've been there, it's been a struggle at times, but again, it's something that has to be done. It's the only way we can make it.
I just wanted to add one thing as
No,
Senator.
sorry, no one else gets to do that. Sorry, Senator. But I will ask you a question, since we get a bonus question. You and because you work so nicely together, you got a bonus question. This is why won't the legislature pass tenant rights policies or strengthen tenant rights or in the Landlord-Tenant Act?
Is that you?
I don't know who.
Is that
That was for Ellie.
That's yours.
Senator Boldman.
Senator Boldman, thank you.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Yeah, so I actually do serve on the Governor's Housing Task Force. I have for several sessions, and also got to serve for when Kamala Harris ran for president, for a cause that's called YIMBYism, yes, in my backyard. And I just want to acknowledge our mayor, Andrea Davis, who's sitting in the room here, but also the three legs of the stool, the city, the county, and the university, who've been working tirelessly on tenants' rights issues. Urban areas like Missoula and Bozeman, we are seeing a lot of hopeful change in that area. We saw $50 million put into a revolving loan in the GO Trust. If folks don't know what we keep saying, the GO Trust, that's the, what is the GO? Growth and Opportunity Trust. The $50 million will go for infrastructure costs to build new housing, which will reduce costs. We had several session long, so they say don't ever give up, don't ever give up. Democrats were strongly behind the bill that did pass that returns rental application fees to renters. There's, as you know, a lot of predatory landlords out there that people were spending thousands of dollars on just applying for housing that's, of course, there's no room at the end. And so they would often not get that application fees back. That bill did pass this session. I did want to say, though, when I wasn't allowed to say it, but part of the reason I think that isn't just a partisan mix that we're seeing at the change of the demographics, it really is the change of the faces of the legislature. I think having more women elected to office has changed the dynamic of politics in the Capitol, which is why we saw the most investments in education and early education and higher education that we've ever seen. Grace Decker, who's here, the work you did. These are influential women who are making a difference. Also age, the number of younger people running now for the legislature. Those negotiations now have changed. Senator Curdy's exactly right. It isn't whether you're an R or a D. It's the identity politics, put it aside, and what are the issues that you care about, and finding those common values and common ground. And that's why I think as Democrats here in Missoula, we are getting things done and finding meaningful change, governing and having a real purpose. Yeah, so thank you.
All right, we are going to go all the way down the line to Representative Fayant. It's your first term, and we want you to speak about the impact of bills on tribal lands and tribal communities and kind of the approach in the legislature. It's kind of a very generic question, so you can pick what you want, but just the effects of, how this legislature will affect tribal folks and tribal lands and sovereignty.
Okay, thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, we had 12 Native American people in the legislature this session, the largest of any state in the union, so yay. We were, this being my first session, I felt that strength in numbers, but I also felt like people really took us serious and, asked us for their support in certain things. One bill in particular was Public Law 280, which affects my tribe. We're the only tribe in Montana that opted into that, and that involves state jurisdiction instead of federal. On other reservations, it's the FBI and the BIA that come in and take care of major crimes. On our reservation, it's the state. So this has been a long-standing, argument between CSKT and Lake County as far as, who's paying for what. We did partially solve that this session with the bill. But there were other bills like the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Task Force. So this task force was established a few years ago, but it only included missing Indigenous people. And really, since this crisis is, so prevalent in Indian country, the big focus is on our murdered relatives. So we added that to the legislation this year. We also added a homicide investigator. We changed it from a task force to an advisory council. So that was a big win in my eyes. And no one has mentioned Indigenous Peoples Day, which was Shane's baby. And the tactic this year was to add it to Columbus Day. And get this, there was even an amendment by someone in one of my committees to change it from it was Indigenous Peoples Day and Columbus Day. They wanted to change it to Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day. Yeah, that happened. But it didn't, that part didn't pass. So, like I said, we're constantly on defense in this session. So, but I learned a lot, and I'm super excited to come back next session.
Thank you for that. All right, and the final of the first round of questions is going to go to House Minority Leader Sullivan. And the question is, what do we have to pay attention to during the interim? And what are likely Republican tactics or strategies? How are they going to make our lives miserable? Now, how do we prepare? And what should we be doing?
Sure, that's a great question. When I speak with people right now, we were isolated away in the legislature, focusing very strictly on state policy. And at that same time, you all were being bombarded with what was happening on a federal level. And we kind of compartmentalize ourselves away into this space. So we're actually all kind of emerging out right now, I think, and honestly getting caught up with what you guys already know about with federal level policy that's happening. But people tell me all the time that they feel burnt out. They just want to take a break. They're like, everything's on fire. What do we, how are you doing this? And we respond, we've been kind of hidden away in this one space, but we're coming back out now. But at the same time, I want to just urge over the interim to follow the Montana legislature, follow the interim committees. We're all available to talk to you guys about what we're working on. But also take breaks and give yourself some grace to sometimes take a step back and say, I'm just going to give myself some time right now, because it's very overwhelming, the amount of stuff coming at you from a federal level and from a state level, and that it's okay to step back for a minute and let other people do some work for you, and then you can step back in when you're ready to go. So don't get burnt out. Give yourself some time. Take breaks that you need. You don't have to do everything all the time. You can pick something you're passionate about and just make it narrow if you need to, and then expand it out also. So don't give up. Keep working. If you need to give yourself a break, do. In terms of the interim, what to follow, I think the partisan judge thing is not going away. And I'm talking about this a lot because I think it's very serious. And I want to emphasize it to everyone in the room that it will be back. And these good folks down here who are still going to be in the building next session are going to have to deal with it again. And I think that the Republicans have seen a way that they can impact the courts and impact judges and get more politics in all of our lives. And they want it very badly. And so I want us all, that as we sit and think and watch, that's something we all need to watch for. I think it will continue to happen. And maybe as a group, collectively, we can figure out a way to get this behind us and put something in law or in the Constitution that says, no, we're not having partisan judicial elections. We're sick of this. Polling shows people do not want it, and I think we just need to make that known and figure that out. So that's what I'd watch in the interim, but also just take care of yourselves, because it's a marathon, not a sprint.
All right, let's give a round of applause to our legislators for answering those great questions, and to you all for writing them. We have a little bit of more time before our mix and mingle, so I'm going to institute a lightning round. So I'm going to read the question, and then the legislator who really wants to answer the question has to raise their hand. And you only get to do it once. You only get to answer one question in the lightning round. So you got to decide if that's your question. And we're going to do a minute and a half for the answer. So here we go. This is on conservation. Protecting public lands in the time of, how do we go about protecting federal lands in the time of federal attacks?
Yeah, well, I think we won a big vote last night in this terrible budget bill that came through from the House. And credit due to Congressman Zinke, who stood up, and he did that for a reason. And that's because Montanans, for the last 10 years, every time there has been a threat to public lands, people have rallied and made it absolutely clear that this is a third rail issue in Montana, and people will be beaten if they do not protect public lands. And so, Representative Sullivan, yeah, everybody gets to take a break, but it's a short break, because we need to be vigilant and loud on these core value issues for Montana. And hunting and fishing and our public lands are why most all of us live in Montana. and making sure that not only we get to enjoy that, but future generations need to enjoy that. It starts with education, it starts with passion, it starts then with making sure that the political connections get drawn. And they were drawn last night in the House, and I'll just finish by saying it's shocking to me that we're not hearing from Idaho and Wyoming and Utah, where the public lands are every bit as valuable, and it just makes our voice that much more important.
All right, next on the lightning round. With genocide happening in Gaza, why did the legislature try to fund a Montana trade office in Israel?
I got this. Okay. Hello. Yeah, so we saw sort of two what I would call Israel messaging bills, and it's important to note that one of the reasons those came forward is to try to put people in a hard spot. Like, the right brought those particularly to target some of our Jewish members, to try to put them in a spot where they would have to stand by what I think are democratic values or push back against their Judaism. A lot of that was unsuccessful. And particularly the trade office bill was defeated. And it was defeated pretty soundly with a weird coalition of Democrats who I think rightly recognized that this is not a space to invest this level of money in a place where there is, genocide ongoing, where the International Criminal Court has said, hey, hold up, this is not a space to be. And the very far right who were like, that's America's dollars. We don't send America's dollars to nobody. Taxing's illegal. And that coalition voted against it. And then the rest of us came in and said, we recognize what these are. They're attempts to take a genocide and turn it into a political game for them to hurt our caucus. I think we did a great job standing up for human rights and also calling out the political gamesmanship and defeating that bill.
Once again, impressive time management, right at the wire. You got this down. You are a pro. Okay, here's the next one. What can we do to support quality childcare? We hire new people at my job, and then they can't find childcare spots, so they cannot take the job or work. Who wants to answer that one? Jonathan. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for the question. One of the bills that I sponsored alongside, I think pretty much everybody up here, is House Bill 456. And yeah, thank you to Grace and the whole MAC team. And what that bill does, in short, is it makes childcare workers eligible for the Best Beginnings Childcare Scholarship. A big problem, if you talk to childcare providers, is that if an employee has kids of their own, it ends up costing more money for them to put those kids in childcare than they would make working in the childcare facility. And alternatively, if the childcare provider is giving away free spots, given that there's ratios for safety per employee with how many kids, I mean, it becomes impossible to run a viable business. And so what this bill does is it follows the lead of dozens, I think over 20 other states, in saying that if you work in childcare, we're going to make you eligible for the Best Beginnings Childcare Scholarship so that you are getting lower cost, essentially discounted childcare for your kids. So that bill passed with bipartisan support. I hesitate there because it was a struggle. It was killed in the Senate. It had to be blasted, but we got it through. It's on its way to the governor's desk. It's not there yet. It needs to go through a few more procedural things. That bill, to get it through the legislature, had about, I think it was 270, something like that, calls made to the Capitol switchboard in support of the bill. That's not including a lot of emails. This was a huge effort from a lot of people. I mean, I truly don't believe the bill would have passed if not for the kind of grassroots advocacy. And if people want to help on this, if they can call the governor's office, and even if it's a 30-second message saying, childcare, we have a shortage of affordable childcare, please pass or please sign HB 456.
Yeah,
I know
that's an
that
excellent note to end
make
on.
I have not memorized the governor's number.
All right, Lauren, what's the governor's number? All right.
Boy.
There we go.
Get out your phone.
There we go. All right. Thank you, Representative Carlin. All right, here's the next one. Was this legislature able to pass an increase in provider rates?
Yes.
What's the implications of that?
Provider rates, that means the amount the state pays reimburses providers who care for people who use Medicaid. You know, hundreds of thousands of Montanans, including kids and seniors and folks in nursing homes and working Montanans, rely on Medicaid. And the doctors and nurses and specialists who care for them are often paid below market rate, which isn't great for a lot of different reasons. So we've been trying over the last few sessions to bring that rate up, to pay people appropriately, to keep our healthcare system functional, to make sure if you live in rural Montana, you have a hospital to go to and a clinic and a family provider who can get care. We did some good historic rate increases last session, but it didn't quite cover everything, and it left out some really important things like nursing homes. This year, we passed a 3% per year, so a 6% total increase in provider rates. That's in the budget, which hasn't been signed. So I guess the answer is yes, asterisk. But we anticipate that that is going to go, and that's going to be another good effort to make sure that Montanans can go see the doctor when they need to.
So this will be another one to call the governor on. All right. Yes, exactly. All right. Will somebody explain the implications of the bill that lets local communities find unhoused community members? And I may have an asterisk to this. There's.
Oh,
all right.
So this is a shitty bill. Okay. So how the legislature works is if you have oil or gas or liquor, you got a lobbyist. But if you're a homeless poor people, who's your lobbyist? Ain't nobody, right? So what they do is they continue to find ways to criminalize, demonize poor people, especially our most poor. And so the bill that the councilwoman is talking about is that they passed a bill, which is one of my least favorite, to truly criminalize homelessness by making it up to a $500 fine to be an unhoused citizen, because that makes so much sense. But I do appreciate the city's reaction, I think, on Monday night, saying that you guys wouldn't enforce that, and I appreciate that. So thank you, City of Missoula. I do want to just share this, though, because there is no lobbyist for unhoused and our most impoverished citizens. I do want to share that in my 7 terms now there, this session we saw the most generous $300 million investment in mental health, community-based care, crisis care, the wait lists we've seen, the criminal defendants that have been warehoused for years. We will create more beds. And again, it's innovation at the city and county. And our county attorney, Matt Jennings, who's a Democrat, who have created some, and our fire department and the crisis team that they have there doing outreach teams. This is a generational change, and we will start to move the needle in our more urban communities and in this community with our unhoused partners and friends. This investment will change lives. One of the small things, I know time's up,
yes,
but is we're going to transfer, and you're a councilwoman, you'll like this. The state's going to start to reimburse you for your criminal defendants that we've been not paying for in our county jails. I know that's a county issue, but it's so important. So that generational change is so exciting, so important.
Everybody, I'm sorry, Senator, but trying to keep it fair amongst all of y'all. You guys can hash it out behind the scenes. All right, so the next question is, can somebody recap the impactful legislation, be it good or bad, on the criminal justice space, including building new prisons, and why is Montana building new prisons?
Well, I'll.
Is anybody who hasn't spoken want to take this one? Sure. All right, Senator Morjo.
Yeah, it's a really good. I mean, I think that question is more of a point. We should be looking at ways to reduce recidivism in Montana. Yes. Not building more infrastructure for imprisoning people in the state. And I think that's just it's everything we've done. Or this is, to me, building more infrastructure for prisons is just a Band-Aid, and we continue to privatize. I want to preface this by saying everyone up here opposes that kind of thing. And when we privatize prisons, one of my biggest worries with the new contract or the plans to build more infrastructure in Montana is that an entity called Core Civic is going to want to ultimately get the contract to either be a part of that build and then run that facility. So again, they're in the business of wanting to grow a business, right? They want to incarcerate more people, they want to make more money. And so that's backwards, in my opinion. And so we really need to fix this. We oppose sending money and sending inmates out of state, sending our money out of state to put people in prison. But we did get some really good things done in the criminal justice section that I was in Section D. We got pretrial diversion money put back into the budget. That was a big deal. We got after-school programs put back into the budget. I put amendment onto the Senate floor. We got that put back into the budget to help youth and families who need that support. So I could go on, but we kicked ass in the Senate. I want to say I'm really proud of what we did.
Was a late coming question, but a very good one. Thank you for that. All right. Montana Constitution is one of the most progressive in the country. Woo-hoo. Is there any, and this is a two-part because we've got two questions on this. Is there anything we can do to protect the Constitution from the attacks at the federal level? And then, can you explain the process we go through to change our Constitution that's coming up? Who makes those decisions? And how to get engaged and how to stop it, basically.
Well, I can try to answer some of those questions. The Montana Constitution is a fabulous constitution, and I encourage you all to read it and to share it in your Christmas cards or in any way. What it does is really truly recognize really valuable things that Montanans felt about each other and about how government should work. And this is why, and as we all know, the separation of powers, the reason we have a whole court system is specifically to make sure that every law we pass is constitutional, meaning that it doesn't violate people's rights, that it doesn't overreach, and that's why we have courts, to look at those laws and say, this one is a bad one. So the Constitution in 1972 was passed by the people of Montana after a long deliberative process, and it can be changed, and it has been changed. So for instance, last session with the supermajority, they put an amendment on the Constitution, which frankly I forgot about until they wanted to amend it again this session. And that's why you don't put really weird shit in the Constitution, is because then you keep wanting to change it. So you always really want to make sure when you want something to be constitutionally changed as a people in an initiative process, that it's something you really believe in. And I think there might be a movement, for instance, to say, we do not want judges with a partisan, and then that might be an initiative that's coming. And I would encourage us to vote for that, not because I think it's necessary, but because it is necessary given the times that we're in. And so that, normally I tell people, never vote for any changes to the Constitution unless you really know what it's all about and you really agree with it, and everybody you know agrees with it.
Yes.
I know, but I'm
trying to be fair so that I get I don't walk away with any enemies, only friends. Okay, we've got two questions left. So for those of you... Okay, two questions left. So those of you who haven't spoken yet, get your hands ready. All right. Grab bag. You never know what... Okay. This is very appropriate given where we are. College is expensive. With housing, books, supplies, and other living expenses on top of tuition, how are you in the legislature helping keep costs down? All right. We're not? Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we didn't raise the cost this session of tuition, so that's a good thing. And we are providing supports that we hope the governor will pass in House Bill 2. So I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and highlight some of the amendments and items that we brought in to the MUS system that I think are going to help students and help the university moving forward. First of all, there's a scholarship program called Montana 10 that has been in motion through grants, and we funded it moving forward. And it's aimed at helping students who may have are highly, high need students. So I'm looking forward to that moving forward. In addition to that, we did some funding around 1-2 free, which we've had in our high schools already, but this is going to help students as they go to college, and they'll have college credits already, so that's going to help with the cost of their tuition moving forward. And we included that with our community colleges and with our tribal colleges. Oh, how did that happen so fast?
It does. It happens so fast. So thank you, Representative Kehoe. I cut everybody else off. I'm going to cut you off too. Yes. Okay.
The governor needs to vote for House Bill 2.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I enforce equally. I try to. All right. Here is the final question on our lightning round today. How do we start winning more statewide elections? Melody was the first one to get her hand up.
Thank you. It is a great question, and I think it's on all of our minds. And I think by talking and listening to people on all sides of the aisle, the independents, the Republicans, the Democrats that are on a spectrum in terms of their belief systems, and really being open to listen, and I will accuse us of this. I think that we can be condescending, and I think that shoots us in the foot. I think it's important to listen to people, not disparage their beliefs, but ask with true curiosity. And I think as we do that, we may coalesce, and we may be able to come behind and elect some statewide Democrats.
All right. A round of applause for our legislators for all their hard work. Pardon? No. Sorry. All right. Well, thank you. We, those of you who are up on the ballot in 2026, raise your hand. All right. Representative France, how are we going to get these people reelected?
Yeah, I'm going to add to Representative Cunningham's good comments, but
he's making a pitch.
Well, I'm speaking now on behalf of the Montana Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, of which we are all deeply grateful for. And I see my good friend Steve Doherty out there, and Steve used to be a good senator from Great Falls back in the days when there was a majority, and Steve passed on the wisdom to me. He said, yeah, when we were in the majority, I would listen carefully to my Republican colleagues, and I would let them go on, and then I would say the magic words, let's vote. And we win elections by voting, and in the legislature, nothing was more important. You see some incredibly talented people up here who worked really hard, but there was a magic number, and that was 42 Democrats who had the punch to build majority votes with Republicans. Instead of needing 20, as we did in 2023 when there were only 33 of us, we needed 9. And the difference was huge. And it was that same dynamic in the Senate. In getting 9 Republicans, we had enough Democrats to get those votes. And so The word from Missoula is we are pretty confident we're going to reelect everybody here who is running again, and we are looking forward to qualified candidates on the Democratic side signing up and running and joining our ranks. The votes have to come from other places in the state to keep our 42. There are a handful of seats in Gallatin County that could go either way. There are a couple in Yellowstone County that could go either way. There's a couple in Cascade. There's one in Flathead County. And holding on to these 42 seats and maybe picking up a couple should be uppermost in everyone's mind. And I'm just going to say to Missoulians, your task is to donate to MDLCC or to write checks for legislators in other districts, as well as supporting our slate here. I think Lauren has cards that have been passed out. Take your phone out.
These are out front.
And also, I'm just going to say, this is inning number 1. We're first at bat. Well, actually, it's a football game. There is a cat grizz contest that has been joined. My colleagues in the legislature from Bozeman say, we're going to kick your ass when it comes for raising money for MDLCC. And I said, ha! And I'm going to need a lot of help, but I think over the next 18 months, we're going to be hearing our totals of what we're raising for MDLCC, and we're going to beat those cats, and we're going to raise more money, and we're going to elect more Democrats across the state. So start off tonight by getting your phones out, taking a picture of the QR code, making a $25 donation or a $50 donation, because it's the other races that we need to be supporting. So thank you for that, and thanks for giving me a pitch.
Yeah. Or you can make it a monthly donation in little bits. It all adds up. Okay, closer to home, or this year instead of 2026, we do have elections this year. And I know that there are some municipal folks in the room. And so I just want to just shout them out, because you will have elections here in a few months. I'm running. I see Mayor Davis is here. She's running for re-election. I see Councilman Carlino's here. He's running for re-election. Yes. Oh, and sorry. Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm like totally blanking your name. Ah, sorry. You're running for Ward 6. There's Chris Foster. Thank you. A brain cramp was bound to happen. All right. And then we also are lucky to have somebody who is throwing their hat in the ring to take on Congressman Zinke. We're going to hear a quick minute from Kristen's here? Oh, there she is. Hi. Okay. And Councilwoman Jordan's here as well. Sorry. Yes. Thanks for the assist, team. Yes. Anybody else? Wait, before we go, did I miss any other municipal people?
Raise your hands if you're running for city council.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Who are you?
Cook, running for Ward 2.
And who are you?
Lucas Moody, running for.
All right. All right. Russell.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Tonight isn't about me, but I appreciate the time to be here. So just one more big round of applause for all of our legislators. They worked incredibly hard, as we've heard, and we've got a lot of work to do moving forward, and obviously at the federal level as well. My name is Russell Cleveland. I am running to take the seat away from Ryan Zinke for House District 1. You probably have never heard of me. I am not a career politician. I am a lifelong problem solver, though, and I think that we have a lot of problems to solve, especially at the federal level. $880 billion getting cut from Medicaid. That's 1 in 5 adults, 2 in 5 kids. That's 742 rural hospitals that'll be closed. Luckily, 500,000 acres were on the docket. We heard last night that got removed, but I don't think that's the last we'll hear of it. I think, with reduction in management forces, that's just the first attempt at what will be an assault on public lands. $80,000 veteran jobs, 80,000 veteran jobs on the chopping block. The list goes on and on and on. So I am a native Montanan. I live out in St. Regis. I grew up in the Bitterroot Valley. I'm a Navy veteran. I am a proud husband and father to a Brady bunch of 7 children. I know. Finally figured out what causes that. Oddly enough, I am the co-founder and former CEO of Colorado's largest child care provider, Rocky Mountain Kids. Yes, I figured out how to take care of all those kids, mine included. But I'm passionate about education, about healthcare. My oldest daughter passed at the age of 13 from leukemia, and so we know all too well about our broken healthcare system. Our family, it's very, very near and dear to our hearts. I think it's a system that we can fix, but it's going to take a lot of people entering the fight. And so tonight, what I'm just doing is I just wanted to make my name known. I am here to talk as long as you want this evening. I hope to earn your support and your vote. This is going to be a fight that all of us have to get into, and it's not just once. It's going to be every single day. So much like you heard up here, I understand there's some rest that's probably well needed. But it's a constant effort. So I'm asking you to stay in that fight with us, make the donations to the committee, make donations to campaigns. We need your support. I'm a grassroots campaign, obviously, and I can't do it without you, and neither can a lot of these folks. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to talking to you guys.
Right, we're going to hand it over here to Eli, the next generation of Democrats. But before we do, I want to take a moment to say a special thanks to Representative Katie Sullivan and Representative Connie Kehoe and Representative Marilyn Marlowe, who's not here. Those three ladies are termed, that mean they're not allowed to run again, and they have all three of them have served 4 terms, and they have done it at a great expense to themselves, their family, their friends, and we are thankful for their leadership. So please give these women a round of applause for their leadership.
Thank you. Well, you may have heard me quacking up here, but I just had the hardest job in the room telling this group to stop talking. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Eli Steinberg. I'm a sophomore at Sentinel High School, and I serve as the state chair for the Montana High School Democrats, the state chapter of the High School Democrats of America, which is the official high school wing of the DNC. And I served as a campaign intern for John Tester last summer. So, but I do have one request from you. Democracy is about philanthropy. It's about giving something. Philanthropy consists of 2 things, money and time. And Representative France just spoke about money. What I need is time, and time is a human resource. And if we want to win elections in Montana and across America, we need to start branching out, including to people who are still too young to vote. So my request to all of you is go and talk to your kids, your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews, your grandnieces, your grandnephews, your neighbors, your friends. And if you think they're interested, get them involved. Because and many of you have heard me say this, democracy is not a spectator sport. It's not an artifact to be preserved. It's a way of life. And that way of life is fundamentally American. And every single American, including those who are too young to vote, have a responsibility to protect that way of life and to live that way of life. So if you know anybody, please talk to me and let's get them involved. Thank you, everybody.
And with that, you're dismissed.